Have you ever been in the zone, firing on all cylinders, time flying by, buzzing with what feels like limitless energy? That's it. That's what you're good at. Your talent, your passion, your side hustle, your own good. My name is Dave, and I'm a teacher, a life coach, an academic coach, and through this podcast, I want to help you discover and own your good. Welcome back to the Own Your Good podcast. This is Dave, and today I am joined by Leta Greene. Leta, welcome.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So we officially just met, but we've communicated a lot over the last...
But I thought we'd met. It was destiny that we were here.
But we have a lot of the same friends.
Right.
We kind of run in the same circle. So go ahead and introduce sort of everything that you've been doing, maybe more recently, stuff that has gotten you to where you are. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a mom. I love being a wife and mom. And so I never want anyone, when they hear about my resume, to think that that is not a thing that I value and that I'm proud of. And I work the hardest to become a mom of anything I've ever done.
That's awesome.
So I'm also an author of 2 books, working on my 3rd. I'm a 3-time TEDx speaker. That
cool.
Makes me sound really cool at my high school reunion, right?
Yeah.
And I do speak and love to be able to do that. Not necessarily wanting the biggest audiences, but I love to be able to make an impact.
Yeah.
And that was a complete surprise to me. That career did not come until I was 37, I think. So when I'm 46 now.
So you weren't really planning on becoming a speaker, but it sort of happened.
Well, God told me to.
Okay.
So he's pretty bossy.
Yeah.
And didn't want to be on his bad side. And so historically, I've been a makeup artist.
Okay.
So everyone in my family has a trade. My dad's a trucker.
Okay.
So I feel like that gives me a lot of color, right? Because I can tell you some fun stories about dad taking us out back and cleaning us off like the dogs. Because you don't send your daughter into the truck stop to shower by herself.
Yeah.
So you just hand her some soap, reaches in the oversized clothes, and you shake off like a dog. And I just feel like that makes me a little bit colorful as a makeup artist.
Yeah.
And just, different in suburbia.
Yeah.
Right? So everyone has a trade, and everybody made fun of my trade because I didn't build anything. I just put makeup on people.
Yeah.
But, it worked out okay for me.
But that's a cool thing. I do know of a couple of people who are pursuing that right now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, partially because of YouTube, right? There's a lot of people that have made themselves by doing different tutorials and things on YouTube. How did you get into that?
I needed a job. So when the girls were sneaking to school and putting makeup on, I just saw an art medium. I just have this given love for art and texture. And so it wasn't that I was really prissy.
Yeah.
I mean, I fit in as a trucker's daughter.
Yeah.
Right? I saw a medium, and then I would do their makeup because it was interesting to me. And then when they were getting married, and then eventually someone offered me money, and I was like, shut up, you can make money doing this? I don't even have to sweat or carry a brick. I'm like, I am so in. Yeah. And it was something that I mostly fell back on. And I actually went to school. I have just an associate's degree in sign linguistics. So the irony being that I'm really good at not talking. We could do all this in sign language and it'll be a really bad podcast. But that's what I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life. Yeah. But I met the right guy, and, my education goals changed, and he was in the Army. It's a very non-compromising employer. Yeah. And my life goal was to have several kids, and it didn't work out. But not for lack of trying. And people are always kind of fascinated to wonder about my mental stability when I tell them I've been pregnant 10 times and on purpose. And I have 3 children, 2 living. And that's why I say I worked really hard to become a mom, and I'm very proud of it. And I never want what I do for money to undermine what I do for the ultimate value that I provide to this planet, my awesome kids.
Yeah. There's a lot right there. I know people who have just a couple of kids that they do, and I know some people that have 12 or 13, and it is either way, that's a lot of work.
I mean, being pregnant 10 times, and I hear about 12 or 13 kids, my uterus that is now gone contracts. It hurts.
Because of the experiences that you went through.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. Yeah. And so I feel like we need to give a lot of credibility and kudos to people that are being parents.
Yeah.
And that's a hard job.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like our society values that contribution because it doesn't get applause. I mean, people clap for me in my job.
Right.
And, the person who's, sweating and putting everything together, and I just show up and do my bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, thank you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because I get clapped for and get a lot of praise, that's not the most important thing I do.
Right. And so referring to that, we've got parenting, which, unless you are a parent, you don't really understand all that it takes. And you think that you do because you were part of a family.
Oh, yeah, we know everything before we're a parent.
Right. But you're talking about getting applause and people appreciating what you do. We're talking about being a makeup artist and the application of that, and the books that you've written, the TED Talks that you've given. What is your message there? What is that thing that you're trying to give to people? So
initially I spoke, and I still do. I mean, the main thing that people hire me for is I teach about confidence.
Okay.
And I guess it would have been 2017 when the Me Too movement was really hitting stride.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, good, we're talking about this. For anyone who's not familiar with the Me Too movement, that I too was molested or abused or raped or assaulted or, right?
But it's more out there than we think it is.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is really good that we're talking about this. Mm-hmm. And then I started noticing that anger and that vitriol and that bitterness and the revenge. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because I experienced that from 2.5 to 14, and I live an amazing life. If you had told my 14-year-old self that my life, not the professional, just like the interpersonal stuff, that I have a wonderful, home life, and my husband and I have a wonderful marriage, and that we have kids, and they're like, just put the white picket fence out front.
Right. And the thing that you're really wanting at the end of life, that you have this happiness that's complete.
The Me Too movement legitimately hijacking people's pain and using that for their own means to revenge. That is not what's going. If that message had been given to me as a 14-year-old girl, I would not have gotten to where I am.
Yeah.
Being a happy, fulfilled individual.
Yeah.
And all of us have, things that have been thrown at us in life that are difficult.
Yeah.
And we can use those things and stay in victim status. And, I'm so against labels. And so that's where a lot of my confidence content comes from, is that when we label ourselves to validate ourselves, we're actually not really looking what our real purpose is. And then therefore we're not able to uncover not only what our purpose is, but our value and our contribution, and look ourselves in the mirror and be proud of who we are.
Right. So the victim idea or mentality is sort of a shell that's covering
your ability
and what we're really capable
to connect with who you really are.
Yeah.
And it's a stage. And yes, I was a victim, and I at one time thought like a victim. Mm-hmm. And then I thought like a survivor. And, the survivor stage is, this happened to me. I need to figure out how that works in the world, and what does this mean? And it's there in every single moment.
Yeah.
Right? It's just such a heavy emotion. But if you look at the definition, and we were talking about words before we got going, right? Words have power. And if you look at the definition, survivor is one of them. The definition is the remnant.
Yeah.
Okay. I am not the remnant of somebody else's choices. That's like a second victimization.
Yeah.
Right? And so though I was a survivor at one point, I put forward, let's be advocates. And so in my book, Love Me Too, I, go to these different points and how I became, it's not about my story. I'm not going, and people are like, why didn't you tell your story? I'm like, really? You really want to know?
Right.
It doesn't matter exactly what happened, because the girl that thinks it was less than me, then she's not going to hear what I'm saying. And the girl that was like, oh, it was more than me, whatever. Why are we competing?
Yeah.
As a makeup artist, I'm like, stop the competition.
Yeah.
Right? So when you look at this whole arch of going from victim to survivor to being an advocate is someone who's been there and lifts others up.
Yeah.
And that is what I wish the Me Too movement was doing, is saying you are worth the work. You are worth the work on yourself for what you're going to become in life, to not be defined by what was and what happened to you.
Yeah.
To become something in spite of that. You owe that to yourself.
Yeah.
And my children don't have second generational trauma from what I went through. And long story short, I was helping a young girl. I found out what her father was doing to her.
Yeah.
And it was like all this, stuff's breaking loose, because I'm calling the police, I'm calling the pastor, I'm calling the grandparents, I'm calling the army, right?
To help this girl.
Because I've kidnapped this child.
Right.
Once I found out who was molesting her. I've kidnapped her and her brothers. And so I need to make sure legally that I'm not going to go to jail for this.
Right.
Like I'm documenting my kidnapping. And my son, just witnessing this, he's probably about 14 at the time. He's like, Mom, how do you know what to do? And I was like,
Wow.
And it had never been something that I felt like I had to bite my tongue and not tell my children.
Yeah.
It was just something that as a parent, it's not like I carried it like a burden. It was just something that was a part of what became who I am. And I'm proud that I've overcome.
Yeah.
And that I parent differently and I love more fiercely. It's in the end, it's all good things.
Right.
So it wasn't like I had to sit down and be like, well, in the third grade,
Right.
Right. So
And eventually that conversation probably would have happened.
Eventually.
When it needed to happen.
Right. And I just said, that is a great question. And I'm going to answer that question. Not right now.
Yeah.
But I'm going to answer that. And, the next couple of days we had the conversation and they were like, pretty much I became a rock star to them.
Yeah.
It was, they were like, wow, thanks, Mom, for raising us in this happy life. And I'm like, you're welcome. High five me. Yes.
That's awesome. I mean, the whole mentality of that, the position of that. So that is what you present to people through the books that you've written and the
confidence
stage
and overcoming abuse. So really they go together. Mm-hmm. And my third book is on living joyfully after grief. So I joke that I'm a really happy person that writes sad books, but they're not sad. They're funny. But people are like, what? And it's putting the work into you to become what you want to become is really the overarching theme of what I talk about.
Yeah.
And it's up to you. Who you are, what you are, is not by where you've come from.
Do you have people, I'm just trying to think of how you get feedback on that. Because you have to have people who are telling you, wow, that was awesome. Is it something that after a presentation where people come up and talk to you, or do they reach out through social media? How do you...
Both. And that's like the humbling thing about being a speaker or an author, is to get those messages from people saying, this has changed my life. The message is more important than the people who come up to you after. I mean, that's nice. Yeah. But also you just kind of are, you want to make sure you're connecting individually. I had somebody who I said, it really kind of drained me. And they said, well, what you're not seeing is this is what Christ did. He ministered one-on-one. And that completely shifted my attitude about, because it's exhausting to have, 30, 40 people. And though you're flattered.
Right.
It's mostly just like how this person's wanting to connect with me on such a deep level. And I've just like laid it all out.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
And they want to talk about it more.
And and there's all of, and I want to make sure that it doesn't let them down.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot. It's like a second or third speech.
Yeah.
What's most rewarding is, 3-4 years later for somebody to say, I heard you speak. Okay. Whoa. They remember that. I mean, how many speakers do people hear? Right. And that what you said, X, Y, and Z has changed the course of my life.
Right.
And I'm like...
And it's a year or 2 or 3 later.
Yeah. The longer it is later, the more I just am like, honey, look at this.
That is cool.
All those sacrifices, that's worth it. And that's incredibly humbling and rewarding.
Yeah. Wow, that's an experience that... I don't know how you can duplicate that, except you do every time you give a speech.
Well, you hope so.
Talk to somebody.
You hope that, and sometimes you just get these magical moments where I think God's kind of worked out like a code with me, where he's like a little flashing light over certain people, and I have just enough ADD that I'll be like, right, going over to that person.
Yeah.
And it's so great when you've hit the one.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't really like the applause. It's a loud, repetitive noise, and it's not really my thing, because I feel like people are like, you can see your audience thinking, and then, you've done your big call to action, as every good speech has, right? Yeah. And then you're like, and thank you. And then everyone claps, and you can see those people who were like, the wheels were churning.
And now it stopped.
And it's distracted. That whole noise has just stopped them from thinking. And I wish that I could kind of be like, and now everybody journal.
Yeah.
Right? Because you see that internal process stop to go along with the crowd.
Yeah. That's cool that you have that experience, that you've had that experience enough to be able to say, I recognize this, and maybe that's who I'm talking to, or that's who I'm trying to connect with.
Right.
I was just thinking, and that experience of let's not applause right now. I was a part of an organization that was facilitating some group work, and I would ask them to take 3 or 4 minutes to reflect on, receive whatever that was we just talked about. What does that mean to you? Pause, write it down if you need to, or just think about it or whatever. But
And one of the things that we're missing in our society, and as an educator, you'll appreciate this. I mean, the lack of being bored is not helping our mental health, our development, our interaction, because the second we even have this, I don't have something to do, we can grab our phones and be validated and entertained. But boredom is where creativity happens. Boredom is where problem solving happens.
Original thought.
Exactly. And we get so caught up in going along with the crowd that we're not, owning our own good. We're not getting into who we are and really we need to be able to be still.
We're afraid to find out who we really are.
Right. And being left with our own brains, our own brains are 82 to 83% naturally negative. And the anthropologists have all these ideas why. I think the Bible was pretty smart where it said the natural man, or I like to say the natural chickie babe.
Yeah.
Right. Our natural state is negative. And so I think the challenge of the human condition is that we work on not being naturally what we are.
Wow.
That we are working on becoming more positive, becoming more enlightened, whatever word you want to put on. But I think more in tune with, what God put us in here, with our trajectory for our life. I mean, even if you take God out of it, which obviously I love God. I think he's awesome, right? Bossy, but awesome. That even if you take that out of it, if you want to accomplish anything great in life, you are going to have to do some hard things, and you're going to have to map that out, and you're going to have to go towards a trajectory. So if your trajectory is $1 million or heaven or whatever it is, you still have to work in line with that. And boredom is where that creativity and how I'm going to get there, and you figuring out what's happening in your head and taking control of what's happening in your own head instead of just being a jellyfish on the ocean of life's emotions, people being like, oh, you made me and I can't because I have anxiety. If you don't have anxiety, you haven't been paying attention. That was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? That is because we're not bored. That's why anxiety is on the rise.
Yeah.
It's bad for our brains.
And the self-affirmation or reaffirmation, telling ourselves, this is what I wanted. This is where I'm going. I can do this.
Right.
Being positive about it.
Absolutely. And you have to repeat that again and again and again. And I always make a joke with my audiences, like, I know you've never heard this before, right? But, the simplest and most fundamental truths are everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And, as speakers, we're not giving people ideas. I think as a good speaker, we're not giving them ideas they've never heard of. No. We're just giving it to them in a way that they might not have thought of it before.
That they relate to.
But I think a good speaker, that the audience walks out going, I'm pretty smart, right? I knew that all along. I mean, it's just entertaining and enlightening, but turning that awareness on within your audience is where the magic happens.
The recognition.
But if they think you're the greatest, then what have they gained?
Yeah. That was awesome, and they are great, and I still sit where I am.
Well, I should buy all their things.
So how long have you been doing this public speaking thing?
Okay, that's kind of a funny story. Okay. So, funny, my husband got hit by a bus in 2007, which is like comical because,
if you say so.
Yeah, I mean, people be like, oh, life hits you like a bus, right? And no, that literally happened. And, without going into all of that. And then 11 months later, he had a massive heart attack and died in my arms.
Yeah.
And God spoke to me while he was gone. And I saw a grayish, beautiful light come into my husband and he reanimate. So I saw my husband's soul come back into his body.
Wow.
So I know, I don't think, I don't hope, I don't have faith in, I know that there is something more than what we are here.
Yeah.
And I'm accountable to that knowledge. And so I'm trying my very best to live up to it. And then I was in a wheelchair, and then our youngest daughter died. All of those events happened in 3 years.
Wow.
And I always say that it took everything I've ever hoped for and everything I've ever believed and just took it deeper into me.
Yeah.
And the compensation of losing a child is, it's on little stones and little plaques, that heaven's in your home. No, like literally that's what it is I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, God, right? I have to make, if, any parent we don't want our living children to be disappointed in us.
Right.
Right? Well, I have a child that hangs out with God.
Yeah.
And so I kind of don't want to disappoint her.
Right.
And so when people have been like, well, it's kind of in the gray area of integrity, I have like this moment of how dare you, you know, and I make plenty of mistakes.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm so very human, but, not for lack of trying to do what's my best.
Yeah.
And losing a kid has just brought, there's so many lessons.
Yeah.
But that is something that I feel like applies to this audience to be able to hear is if you get really clear on what your value is, which I believe, that we're children of God.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
I don't care what color you are. I don't care, anything. We're all children of God. That's the only label that matters. Yeah. Everything else from that is a distraction meant to divide us that I believe comes from he who is poopy, who wants everything to stink, and he wants us to be flinging poop on everybody, and everybody makes poop, but what you do with it is what defines you.
Yeah.
Right? And what do you do with the natural in you? Your natural instinct to be angry or revenge?
Yeah.
Or do you dial that back and figure out what do I really want? What is my trajectory? What is it that I really want to become?
Yeah.
And then just implement little bits every day.
That is a very vivid analogy for
the poop.
life. Yeah.
It is kind of my word. Yes. You'll know anyone who's hung out with me too long, if they're over 20 and use the word, over 12 and use the word poopy too much, it could have been me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So your experience, several negative experiences or life-challenging experiences, belief-challenging experiences, and you're still positive and pushing forward to help other people.
Well, it's because of those things. The lie that we buy that makes us unhappy, because if they say that disappointment comes from failed expectations, right? Mm-hmm. The lie is that everything's supposed to be perfect.
Yeah.
No, it's not. What would be the challenge? What would be the growth? Why would we even need heaven?
Yeah.
Why would we need, nirvana or anything or, Valhalla? Yeah. Why would we need anything that, human beings have struggled for if it all could be perfect here?
Yeah.
It's about making you like you because you're doing what's right.
Yeah.
And you can't fool you into thinking you did the right thing when you know you didn't.
Yeah. I try to teach that to my students about writing, that it's going to be difficult. You're going to be learning new things that you thought you knew, and you're going to figure out how to apply those things. But it's not going to be easy. Like you're going to have to sit down and do it.
Embrace the hard.
Yeah.
Sorry, but life is pain, Your Highness.
Right. And by the end of the semester or by the end of the year, I hope you recognize that you have more skill or craft than you did before.
Right.
But that only comes from doing it.
Right.
You can't just suddenly be a better writer.
But wait, I can. I just have my phone to tell me that I can be, and I can get likes. I mean, so much of what distracts our development emotionally, mentally, physically is thinking we can have instant gratification.
Yeah.
And I think it's poopy.
Yeah.
Because if we put that aside as something that's not actually real, then we can start working on what is real. And that's our own character.
And we know that the things that we really enjoy took something.
Right.
We know that.
Right. But we've made commitment disposable. We've made people disposable. I mean, everything sacred we've made disposable.
Yeah.
And we wonder why we're so sad.
Yeah. That is crazy to think that, I mean, is it that simple? It's that simple.
I think truth really is.
Yeah.
And, when we just kind of do the gut check, right?
Yeah.
And there's all different ideas of where, that our guts have been coming through our ancestors and all. I mean, there's all these different theories. I just think that we just know because we've got that divine within us, right? And that when you feel it's not right, well, guess what? It's not right.
Yeah. Do something different. Go
Change
in a different
course.
direction.
Yeah.
So that applies to a lot of different aspects. And if you're younger and you're not sure where you're supposed to be going, but you know your gut, and that's hard when your friends are telling you it's cool.
Well, because, we're tribal creatures.
Yeah.
And we care more about the tribe that's at school with us and the tribe that feeds us, AKA our parents.
Yeah.
But most parents are not as stupid as teenagers think they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell my kids all the time I'm stinking brilliant.
All the things that I've been through, I know it all.
Well, I don't say that. I just am like, I'm amazing. I do turn to them saying, do you ever fight with your siblings like my, don't you? And then sometimes I cry, and that's guilt loading them. But
Yeah. So that we're all divine, that we all come from a creator, that we all have a higher purpose. We can tap into that regardless of what our belief system is.
absolutely.
We can be creative, we can be positive, we can be feeding on that energy of, I don't know what you would call it, that feeling of belonging.
Yeah. And I think that anything that puts us in discord, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they've done studies where they've like talked to water, which we are mostly water. Have you heard about this one? I love this one. And it's like the Nagnark study, because it's a Japanese word, so I don't know how to say it. So if anyone's like, did I not hear that correctly? It's because I just flip over the word.
Yeah.
Right? But they talked to water, and they got the water from the same source. Mm-hmm. Okay. And this water over here, they said, you're beautiful, you're amazing. And to this water over here, they're like, you're a little piece of poop, right?
Yeah.
And they, isolated them from each other. Uh-huh. And then under a microscope, the crystalline structure of the water was altered.
Wow.
Same source, lab.
Sure.
Right? Well, we're human, and we're made of mostly water. And going with my theory, which I'm right, I say that to my kids a lot too, and this is what I think, because I'm right, right, that we all came from the same source, but you put us in different environments.
Right.
Right? Now, in my first book, I talk about how grandma used to tell me I was ugly and that nobody would love me, right? And so, in theory, I was the water that was being told I was a poop.
Yeah.
But different experiences whispered to me, sometimes more loud. Well, that was a better message. And maybe just if I use the hypothesis of trying that versus doing what I've done,
Yeah.
if that could get me a different result, just the scientific method, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just following that light, which I believe is from God.
Yeah.
And because of my experience with my husband and my daughter who's passed, I know I'm a witness. I mean, like, I am telling you right now, right? It is real. And I've had experience with the people all over the world, as far away as Indonesia, Armenia, and had these kinds of conversations. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's so cool is we all kind of believe the same thing.
Yeah.
We all do, but we end up, how many wars and battles, and you can't even get a family of 5 or 8 people to even, why, just stop it, guys. Yeah. Just stop. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I don't want to behave in this pattern, and altering the pattern.
Yeah.
You have to just step out of it, right?
Yeah. That's brilliant. I want to find this study, and I want to find the study about talking to plants.
Yes.
And I want to find the pictures that were on Instagram of telling your dog that he's a good boy. Have you seen those?
I haven't.
It's the same thing. Like, you tell the dog that he's a good boy, and he's like, really? I am?
And I talk to my plants.
Yeah.
I'm out there, hello, you're wonderful. And then the ones I'm going to eat, I'm like, I'm going to eat you up. But I say it in a nice tone so they don't feel threatened.
That is awesome. So you've had this amazing, ups and downs journey discovering how to listen to what other people need, that inspiration from God, what other people are going through, how to communicate or connect with them. And you're sharing that message through the things that you're writing and speeches, how has this summer been with the COVID-19
Oh, it's
pandemic?
been hilarious, right? I think it's going to be a bit before we can get together again, which is a really sad thing.
Yeah.
I had a speech last night for the foster families of Utah, and that was it. It's great. The good news is I know what my content is, and so I'm imagining my audience in my mind, and it's way more work. But I think it's professionally, it is what it is. I'm not really worried because I'm not the one driving the train. God's the one who put me in this profession, and it's fine. But it's going to be crazy for a while. But the nice thing is, for me, I don't really care how big the audience is.
Yeah.
I care about the connection.
Right.
And as a makeup artist, I was teaching women about confidence, having no idea that one day I would write a book, right? But it was, the one-on-one, that interaction, that impact. And I think that all this social distancing is ripping at the fabric of our human psyche because we need each other.
Yeah.
And if I get COVID by hugging my neighbor, then bring on the COVID, right? Yeah. I think there's more at play here, and I don't want to get like all because there's, as the Alcoholics Anonymous, grant me the serenity to know what I control. Yeah. And I don't control that.
That I don't have a finger on.
Right. I'm not, the politicians or the whatever, right? But there's just a lot of fear. Yeah. And I choose to not buy into that fear. I'm not going around licking people. But to be fair, I wasn't licking people pre-COVID. Sure. Just the one person that I lick, my husband. Sorry, kids. Old people like each other too. So, going forward in wisdom, but I think whenever we notice that we're turning into the fear, again, it shuts down the creativity, shuts down the ability to problem solve. It turns up the anger. Yeah. And we can't be living that way. Our brains, the cortisol that floods through our bodies when we do that is poopy.
Being frustrated with people for no reason.
Right. And so I personally am making an extra effort to be extra friendly, which is a little bit ridiculous. And the other day I was at the grocery store and, there's, we have to all social distance and there's direction. And this lady just kind of winked at me, like, hey, it's okay. I see what's going on here. And I was like, I love that. So now I'm going around winking at people like, I see you. I see you. Right.
Somebody that I work with, a theater teacher, put it out there that the wink should no longer be creepy while we have to wear masks.
I think I want to steal that. Yeah, I'll have to get that teacher's name because that is so fabulous.
I feel that way. I want to be able to communicate with my students and the people in the halls and the teachers that I work with, but I don't want to be seen as the creepy old guy.
And someone who's fluent in sign language, I'm like at the grocery store today and this lady's talking to me and I'm just a little bit hard of hearing and I'm just going, I know. I read lips a lot more than I thought. And it's just, I'm like, what? And, people that I'm sorry everywhere I go, I'm like, no, you don't have to apologize. We're all dealing with the weird and we all want to be respectful to the fact that there are people who are at risk. Right. And let's just all be nice. Yeah. Right?
If it were that easy, just be nice to
if we all just do our little bit, we can make our little corner a little bit more heavenly, right?
And eventually we'll touch elbows with other people that are doing the same thing.
Right. And even if we're wrong, at least we were the people that were trying. And again, it just goes back to you can look yourself in the mirror and be like, I did good today. Yeah. Right?
That is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a matter of if we win or lose. It's that we try. Yeah. That's the thing. And we get so based in results and the instant gratification that we're robbing ourselves of the little perfect moments that are there. I mean, there was this moment after my daughter died that we had told the kids it was her idea that we'd go to Disneyland because they were at the age that was magical. Yeah. And I'm up on this, roller coaster, and I love a good roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And it still hurts so bad that my daughter died. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, we live a long time in my family, and I've got to go the next 60, 70 years with this. You know what? I have a decision how I go forward with that. How do I want to live the rest of my life? In misery? Self-imposed grief? Yeah. The grief is still there, but the yin and yang, of Chinese philosophy, the thing is, they are together. The pain and the joy reside together. The grief and the love reside together. You take away the grief, you've taken away the love. Yeah. And we want to be all one thing. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm a good person. Get rid of all the bad
stuff. It's back to...
Right. I'm a good person. Well, I don't care if you're a good person. You just punched someone in the eye. Your action was poopy. Yeah. But I'm a good person. You can't be upset with me. Like, I'm not your judge, but your actions don't line up. Right. But that's self-validation and self-assurance instead of just doing things that are good. Yeah. And not sitting there being like, I'm a good person. Right. Just each day giving it a shot. Yeah. And doing that day after day after day, it becomes beyond that you're a good person. It's somebody that's making an impact. Yeah. And you like you because you're trying. Yeah. And you're okay with the things. I mean, nobody likes to mess up, and nobody likes to be called out that they messed up. But I think it's easier to accept if you know that you're really trying. Right. Well, Okay, so one of my, I'm like, well, here's the thing. Okay, so nobody likes to be called out. They messed up, right? But I think that's really one of the greatest gifts we can give people. Yeah. My husband is a perfectly honest man. So if I go up to him, I'm like, do I look fat in this outfit? I will get an honest answer. And the truth is, I'm asking if I look fat in the outfit because I'm thinking I don't look good.
Right.
Right? Because if I'm looking good, I don't need any validation. Right. I'm like, dang, look who's looking fine today. Right? I'm asking because I'm wondering.
Yeah.
And he will tell me the truth. And, when we first got married, I was kind of like, right?
You still love me?
There's these, but you know what? It's helped me grow more because he holds me accountable. And vice versa, I get to hold him accountable.
Yeah.
And I think, ultimately that is the greatest gift we can give people. There's a difference between unasked for criticism.
Right.
And I've gotten the people who I've made an impact for. I've also gotten the hate mail.
Yeah.
Like people telling me I'm not that good looking. And I was like, well, guess what? You don't have to have sex with me. So that's okay. Right? Like not a privilege you
Not
get.
in my circle,
so why would you care how good looking I am or not? Like, why is this, And I have a thing about how you filter who gets to impact your inner soul. Right. But basically, why are we letting all the voices out there have the same equal access to our inner mind?
Yeah.
Right? They don't have that privilege.
So how would you suggest that to somebody, especially teenagers? How do you let people in and trust them and block out the people that are no good?
Well, you said one of the words. I filter it like in a bullseye, right?
Okay.
And in the center of the bullseye, there's you. And who gets to be in the center of the bullseye with you?
Just you.
Well done, right? You and I can say, if you believe in a loving God, then you could put God in there.
Yeah.
But it's actually a sign of abuse if you're filtering your actions through the impulse of someone else. So when I was being molested, I thought he was the sun and moon because it wasn't just what they do to your body, it's how they groom your brain, right?
Right.
And, he was molding me to be his future wife.
Yeah.
Right? So if you'd asked me at 8 years old what I thought love was, I would have had a pretty twisted version of what that was because I had been molded, right? And so, that's why children are not allowed to give consent and should not be given that burden of responsibility for their own food, clothing, protection, and shelter.
Right.
Ideally, every child will have those things as a granted in a loving way.
Yeah.
And loving being that the person giving that is able to sacrifice them for what's easy for them for the benefit of them.
Yeah.
That's the easiest definition I can come up with to filter out the poopy love.
Yeah.
Because, words have power and a lot of times things are mislabeled.
Yeah.
Right? So you filter out, you've got you in the very middle. And if you're always thinking, well, they won't like it or they won't like it, ding, 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 that's a problem, right? Yeah. So it's you there. And the people on the innermost circle should be people who can do three things well. They can be loving, with my definition that I gave.
Yeah.
Trustworthy. So let's say I'm going to meet you for a podcast and I'm not 45 minutes late, but I communicated, so I was being accountable.
Yeah.
Right? So if I just showed up 45 minutes late, you'd be like, really? But I was communicating, so there's accountability.
Yeah.
So trust isn't lost, even though I'm human.
Right.
Right? But if I just didn't show up at all, then you're like, wow, she's super not professional and disregarding my time.
Yeah.
And it would be really hard for me to regain that without being like, oh my crap. There's this thing called a calendar and I am 46, but somehow can't use it. You know what I mean? Whatever, right? People make mistakes, but how, if they say they're going to do something, do they do it?
Right.
And then when they mess up, can they say the very crucial words of, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not I'm sorry, but I'm sorry.
Right. I'm sorry you didn't like my response. Or
relationships are sticky. And they're hard and they're intense. And if you haven't messed up in your relationship, you're not in deep enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So those three things are what earn people the closest tier. And then it moves on out. And so we're kids, hopefully and ideally, your closest tier are your parents. If not, then you have the opportunity to assess what works or doesn't work for a happy human life. Right? Congratulations, you're not the only one who got that card in life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Some people don't get perfect parents. Oh, I mean, other than our children, of course, right? So filtering out, is this person someone who's invested? But we end up giving to the people who yell the loudest for it. right? The people who demand it.
Yeah.
And that is from bullying to abuse. That is an unacceptable way to run a relationship. But I thought we were best friends. Yeah. Well, if we're best friends, we don't really have to go around declaring it. It just is.
Right. And
it's not like, you can be like a polygamous best friend. You can have lots of best friends,
Right.
Right.
And no matter what happens, no matter the week that you were gone to vacation or whatever, you're still there. You don't have to check up on it.
Right. And real connections don't have to be validated.
Right.
And yet that's what everything in our world is about. And what I'm telling you is nobody can validate you into liking you. You have to stop the crazy, stop all the voices, and get inward. And what do you like about you?
Yeah.
And I've been there where I didn't have anything that I liked about me. Right? They say that, when you've had to go through something, I mean, I, at one point in my life, was suicidal, except for the fact that I didn't think I was worthy of making a mess.
Wow.
And the only value I had was the cleanup I did for other people. That was it. That's all I had. That was what I envisioned.
Yeah.
And to think where I am now, it has taken a tremendous amount of work. Now, if I had never done anything professional and never got the huge honor of being on your podcast, just being someone who liked me, that makes me an Olympian.
Yeah. So that's a lot to take in. I'm thinking about anybody who's listening to this, however old they are. I think we've all been there where we've had something hard to deal with, or we've had to think about what we're really worth to ourselves. And what I hear you saying is that no matter what you're going through, no matter who you lose, no matter who makes you upset, no matter who you get upset at, no matter whatever the circumstances are, that you can be happy with your effort to try.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And ultimately, I believe in a redeemer. And it's interesting that every single religion that has ever existed has a redeeming figure in the deity, right? Now, I call that Jesus Christ, but, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, you just go on and on. There's all a path to redemption. Why would every single religion and philosophy need a redeeming path if it weren't necessary to the human condition?
Yeah.
Right? So, the trying and the failing is the victory.
Yeah. No matter what, because we all will.
Right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because you tried. You got up and you fought the fight, right? So
that's been your message for a while. That's been
kind of summarized,
who you are and who you've been trying to present that to, or that you are trying to present that to people. I know that you have a new project. I don't know if it's new.
Yeah, kind of.
I've only just discovered it.
Yeah, well, okay, so it's kind of, every speaker we have, we start gaining influence.
Yeah.
And I joke that I've done all the things I can to not be famous. Like if somebody will say, if you want to do this, do this. And then I'm like, perfect, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not an ambitious person. I'm very happy and was very happy before I ever stood on any stage because I like me, right? In fact, there's a lot of joy in living a quiet, meaningful life.
Yeah, I can
It's
see that.
nice when I go to the grocery store and I don't have my makeup on. I don't have people coming up to me telling me that I should be living up to a more professional image.
Right.
And I want to be like, well, they just told me I have colon cancer and I'm kind of processing. Instead, I just go, thank you for your feedback. Right? I mean, there's a certain pressure to that.
Yeah.
And that is not something that I've ever found attractive to be known. I want to be known for, I like deep connections. Mm-hmm. I like deep relationships, and having a lot of people know me, there's a reward to that, but there's also an emptiness to it because it's one-sided. They know me, but I don't know them. Yeah. Right?
And if we talk about that target that we were just talking about, they have zero influence over your life. So
right. I mean, really it should be a very tight sphere. And for me, it is a tight sphere. It is first and foremost my husband and my kids.
Yeah.
And I have some friends that I can call up and they'll tell me when I'm full of crap.
Yeah.
They'll hold me accountable to my best self. And that is what I seek out in friendships.
Yeah.
Not people who
Tell you what you think they think you want to hear.
Right. You know?
Yeah.
And so anyway, people have been telling me for years, like, Leta, you have all this influence. You've got to become a seven-figure, see, I can't even say it. It's so repulsive. A 7-figure coach.
Yeah.
And you could be charging so much for your speaking. And I don't really care about the size of my audience. In fact, once you get the lights where you can't see your audience,
right.
I don't like that.
That is frustrating.
Right? So the bigger has not been appealed to me. I'm doing this because literally God told me to.
Yeah.
And that could be like a whole thing, but that's the quick summary.
Yeah.
I just want to do what's right? With the talents and the time that I have here, I'm just trying.
Yeah.
So you got to use your influence. You got to use your influence. And I was like, I'm pretty sure when God told me to get on social media and told me to speak, he wasn't like, so I could make more money.
Right.
I mean, like, I like money. I grew up, worrying about where I was going to get money. I grew up living off of one meal a day, school lunch and cleaning houses. I mean, I like money, but I have enough for what I need.
Yeah.
I feel very financially comfortable. And the more I've made disgusting amounts of money and it didn't make me any more, and I walked away from it because they wanted more and more and more and more. And so that was actually 11 days before I put the post up that led to Love Me Too, that I walked away from a $936,000 contract.
Wow.
And they were just like, they've been trying for 8 months to get me to. And I'm like, you keep moving the wrong number.
Yeah.
They kept offering me more per speech. And I'm like, I'm not going to speak 4 or 5 days a week. I actually like the children I made.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that was a deal, like a contract, right? Uh-huh. And walking away from all of that opportunity and all the money that I had made with that, I was like, okay, I've got all this influence and I've kind of been like waiting for God to give me the trigger of what I was supposed to use it on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for more money.
Yeah.
Like as soon as people were like, I help people to go to, I'm like, not your target market.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like almost putting on LinkedIn, like if you're going to talk to me about making more money,
right.
I'm just,
that's not what I'm doing.
It's just not what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I like making money, and there's nothing. This is not a woman saying I don't need money. I just need. That's not at all.
There's different intention.
It's just not my main motivation.
Yeah.
I make money, and I make enough, and my husband makes money, and he makes more than enough, and I'm a trucker's kid, and right. It's just not what clicks. And anyway, with COVID, we're all kind of looking for how can we affect for good. At least I hope people are thinking what you can do.
Yeah.
And I have an adopted Native American sister that lived with us when she was in high school. There was a placement program that they had for kids to be able to come and get an education.
Yeah.
And she lived with us, and in the intervening years, she's never asked for anything. She's been a wonderful daughter to my parents and just brought them so much joy and additional grandkids. And,
sure.
And, she's been a good sister to me. And, we don't have deep, if anyone knows the Navajo culture, they're not ones to sit down and have, deep, it's just they just feel it. It's just, you just know you're close, right? There's just kind of a vibe about it, right? Anyway, so you hear that it's hitting the Native Americans harder.
Right.
And so I helped participate actually with Devin Thorpe, our mutual friend. He said he needed some drop-off location. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I love gathering. I'm a yard seller. I can gather stuff, right? So my friends in 2.5 days got almost 3 tons of stuff.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is kind of fun. Yeah. I'm organizing toothpaste and mouthwash in my garage. I'm having a good time with this.
Yeah.
I love work.
Yeah.
I love the principle of work and how it clears your brain.
Yeah.
And then I find out that my sister has the symptoms of COVID, but she can't go and get tested because it'll be $1,000 fine if she leaves her area. And I'm like, what, the pooper snot?
Yeah.
And anyway, I call her up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to send you a gift box. What do you need? Now, if you call me up when I am sick,
right,
I will tell you what I want in my gift box. Chocolate and more chocolate and then more chocolate.
Yeah.
Right? I call her and she's like, well, I would really love some hand sanitizer. And I'm like, wait, you don't have hand sanitizer? And she's like, and soap? I'm like, okay, what? Because she's educated. She has a job. She's all the things that.
Is she living on the Navajo reservation?
Well, she's a teacher, and she's teaching, on the reservation. She's gone back to go help her people. And
so in our minds, we're thinking if you're educated and you're living somewhere, then you have access to a lot of those things, even in, where we're at in Utah, the greater Salt Lake area, it's hit or miss if you're going to get your Clorox
Right.
wipes.
But, I had soap.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And come to find out, there's I said, okay, how many people on your mesa, she lives in a town called Jedito, that don't have soap right now? And she's like, oh, probably about 40 families. And I was like, great, talk to the village elders, because, they've got the cell phones, right? Find out how many. And I'm thinking in my mind, we just got 3 tons of stuff.
Yeah.
I think we could maybe get boxes together for 43 families. And one of the things that frustrated me was you're like, all this stuff. But human nature is if I'm in a line, I'm going to take maybe more than I need.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to stop the spread of COVID, right?
As if everybody has access to.
And if you stop the spread of anything negative.
Right.
Is if everyone has equal access, right?
Yeah.
Which is, there's a whole thing with that, right? But everyone should have soap and deodorant and
Sure.
shampoo and toothpaste and toothbrush. I mean, that wouldn't be that hard, right?
Right.
So she's texting me, oh, no, that's 50 families. But I've already put out to my social media that we're going to do this. And then there's actually a video of me crying, being like, I just got the final number and it's 153 families.
Whoa.
And I'm like, but in my gut, even though I was like, what have I chewed off here?
Right.
I felt kind of that excitement, like, I think we can do this.
Yeah.
We can do this. And I already set a date when we were going to go. I hadn't even talked to my husband. My husband's so awesome. He's like, well, if it's good, we're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And on the way down, the AC stops working. I'm like, it's just so we can have tribulation,
There's got to be a payoff for the hard stuff.
And he's like, yeah, and we had to upgrade the trailer that we had. And everything just fell into place. And it was crazy. These people that I'd spoken for and those people that I'd spoken for and this audience member and all these people from all this influence that I gathered.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what I'm supposed to use my influence for.
Yeah.
This. So there's 2 ongoing issues that the Native American population faces, right? Well, one, they don't have water. And again, I'm not the government, so I'm not able to go in there. And people are always like, well, the reservation tribal council,
Right.
with what tax
Whatever
base?
the conflict, whatever, yeah.
With what tax base? They don't tax their land because they look at it like, oh, I don't know, Native Americans,
Yeah.
right? And so they don't tax their land, so they don't have a revenue, and they're paying, on their salaries, they're paying taxes to who? United States government,
Yeah.
right? So I can't solve that, but you need clean water.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to sanitize your environment. And it would be great to be doing food drives and all of that, but maybe I'm just not ready to take that one on.
Yeah.
But these 2, and then Miracle After Miracle, a company that has a cleaning product that they actually sell to direct sales companies and hospitals and churches, is cooperating with this crazy idea. I can tell you the whole amazing story how this all came about. It was like God was kind of up there being like, when you're ready, I'll plop this in your lap.
Yeah.
And so we've actually named the product Jedito, that typically is only available, if you're buying it
Commercially.
commercially.
Yeah.
And it's just this great little thing. And we have a buy one, give one, because the manufacturer is I think this is a crazy idea and I love it. And I'm actually talking to the guy who invented reverse osmosis.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, we did this in India and we did this. And I'm sitting there talking to this guy. I'm like, great, can we do this in America?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're working on those 2 issues. And I don't want to just ask my friends for money forever. Right. And I have I admit, I'm my people are awesome, right? Whenever I've done a charity thing over the years, people have been pretty awesome about it.
Yeah.
And I'm but this is an ongoing thing. Our homes also need water. And, so you can get a water bottle that filters out arsenic, which is what their water has.
Right.
And this Jedito product, this cleaning product, gives us the flexibility to give them one. And then I also want to go and do school fundraisers, right? Because they sell, crappy cookie dough. And even though I do love some cookie dough, right? But it's not,
Right.
And they only get a 20% commission. Well, I'm wait, I'm going to tap my speaker friends. I already have some that I've called them. I'm you're doing this.
Yeah.
And then we go in and we do assemblies on food deserts and opportunity deserts. And the thing is, you put up an image of a kid who, their skin tone's different, but they want the same thing you want.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, don't be a racist snot. You just defeated racism because they're going to go out and serve that kid. And you love what you serve. So we're able to educate, right? And give the school a 20% commission, Yeah. And everything I'm selling on my social media is just going into the nonprofit that also is, mailing back product to the reservation. Right. and, is going to fund these sexual abuse prevention conferences that I want to do, educating parents, because it's weird. Nobody wants to hire me to teach them that. But I've gathered, pornography experts and all these different people. And just before COVID hit, I'm even talking to sponsors, but they want 500 people in the room.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to do that, but I'm not going to wait.
Right.
Because, during quarantine, the fact of the matter is these kids are being quarantined with their abuser.
Right.
And the parents, I can't stop that per se, but I can educate parents to prevent what happened to me.
Yeah.
Because my parents were groomed to accept it, just not knowingly.
Right.
They were not participating in this, but he manipulated them as well.
Just to know that he was safe.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's a book, and I had to read some of this because I have to for my job, but it just made my skin so angry. And it's a pedophile handbook on how to, who to go after. And guess what? Who you go after? That girl is not confident.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
It was so hard to
so
go
full
through
circle.
Training as a teacher and training as a scout leader of what you're supposed to watch for. Mm-hmm. It is aggravating.
Yeah. And I think this is the issue of our time, that how we are treating the innocent, how we're treating children.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything bigger in our society. I mean, there's more people being trafficked for labor or sex than have ever been in slavery, than ever in the history of time. And part of that's population, but we just turn a blind eye to it. And we as Americans are the biggest consumers. If you can get a child that you're going to traffic for sex, meaning to be raped, right? In America, you can charge 5-6 times more.
Wow.
Than, sex tourism, which now, of course, now that we're not traveling as much,
right.
I mean, I love that there was this big, huge operation to rescue all these kids. And you have to be I have it set in what I'm watching in the news to watch for these things. Why is that not all over? And we're talking about masks. Guys.
Yeah.
There are so much more important things.
Selective media, yeah.
Right? And I think we as a society have to be like, I will not accept this. First in my own home.
Right.
And then my community, and be aware what the signals are. Because I knew what the signals were, I was able to help that young lady.
Yeah.
Right? And that young lady is still in my life. And, in my book, she's, got a code name and stuff. But if every housewife, right? That's what I was at the time.
Sure.
And proud of it.
Yeah.
If every housewife could rescue one kid.
Right.
I know a lady who did the same thing that I did, but faced criminal charges.
Wow.
And cost her about $50,000 to defend herself. And she's like, well spent.
Yeah.
Well spent.
Yeah.
Right? But if we just are aware and recognizing, I have all these things that I teach that I have, studied and researched because I had to do that for myself before I could ever make a person.
Yeah.
How am I going to keep this child from experiencing what I experienced?
Yeah.
And they take advantage of our, they're good people and, we all go to church together or,
right.
Those are, blind spots, like when you're driving down the highway, right?
Right.
And you've got to be checking your blind spots, not living in paranoia, but living in the realization of our times.
Yeah. Watching for whatever those signs are.
And teaching your children without being like, and they're pedophiles.
Right.
You give them principles of truth.
Right.
And, and they'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just threw out a lot of deep stuff. Huh? I know. I'm like a fire hose.
Well, I'm just trying to think of how to sum all that up. You've figured out what you are for. You know that you're a mother and a wife, and you're doing your best at that. And with your experiences in life, you figured out how to share a self-worth message, what your value is. And on top of that, as you've experienced and grown that circle of influence and friends and people that are on the same page as you, it's all sort of, you keep referencing God did it and you're following that. And I think that is amazing. How can, whether they're a teenager maybe going through some similar experiences, or maybe they're an adult going through some similar experiences, or maybe they've had to change career direction because of what's happened over 2020, whatever you want to,
right,
whatever has happened.
I'm waiting for the zombies next.
Right? Hurricanes in Utah and earthquakes and all of the things that are going on. How do you help someone turn on the radar to that message, whatever they're supposed to be doing?
Well, first of all, it's the internal work, right? So, I wake up in the morning, like many people, not really happy that the day has begun.
Yeah.
Right? I got my old creaky parts, Yep. I mean, getting older is great, but, it's not as much fun in the morning.
Yeah.
And my husband's super annoying because he gets up like really happy and like wants to go work out.
Ready to start the day.
Yeah, just so annoying. So, don't get this image that I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I wake up like everyone else and I got to iron out. And I teach an exercise that I call vanity prayers because I do it at my vanity, right? And we have this concept that focusing on ourselves is selfishness.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you can only give to another person what you possess.
Yeah.
Right? My grandmother said the things she said to me because she did not have self-acceptance, because she did not have self-love. In her world, she loved me, what she described as love. But the truth is not everybody understands that concept.
Right.
They can't be selfless enough to do it. How do you get all of the good things? You've got to create a place for them.
Yeah.
And so I get up in the morning and I am praying. I'm doing my affirmations about me, not about my kids, not about my husband. I'm putting my head and heart straight so that my appearance becomes a symbol of my mental and emotional work that I've done.
Yeah.
But I planned out my attitude. When I know, like, I'm going to do this and this and this today, I'm like, how am I going to respond and react to that? Right?
Yeah.
So I'm just filling my head full of goodness. And I listen to educational things. I feel, I'm a podcast junkie, right? If they're on there using poopy words other than poop, right? That's not for me because I don't want to fill my head with the F word that's based in violent rape, right? I mean, everything I'm consuming, I'm not saying entertainment's bad, but I am focusing on what am I thinking in this moment.
You're setting yourself up up for that.
I'm being intentional about who I am. And so, I've had times of my life where I only had one job because I was in a bed.
Yeah.
Couldn't get out of a bed. And my one job was to be pleasant to the people around me. And, the other day my daughter was telling somebody about how I'm like the nicest sick person. I'm just going on and on. I'm like, yes, right? But we all have, whatever our circumstances are, if we change what's happening in our head, it changes our circumstances, right?
I'm thinking of all those times that I was frustrated about what was going to happen at school that day, and I was listening to Metallica on the way because that's how I felt. I got to check myself because, your family can sense that. The kids can sense that.
Right. And I had 7 miscarriages, and I only got them for so long. And so I didn't eat sugar when I'm pregnant. Mm-hmm. I love the sugar. I joke that is my drug, right?
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I'm like, right? I love the sugar, but I only get this kid for so long.
Yeah.
And even if I just knew in my heart it wasn't going to work. Yeah. And of course, after so many losses, you just pregnancy no longer equals baby, right? But the connection between the child and the womb, the mother and the womb, right, is verified.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that my daughter that passed, when she was in pain, she had my same body language of how I'm in pain.
Wow.
And it was just so profound to me to see that, I got 9.5 months because, by the way, it's almost 10. I guess they did a survey and women said, no, 9 months. If you tell me it's 10, it's too long. So they did a survey and they just said, we're going to tell everyone it's 9, but it's really 10.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, we got those 10 months together, and yet she could mimic my pain coping strategy. And I don't want to get into too much of the nature nurture thing because I think it locks us into thinking that we're a product of where we came from.
Right.
But we can take the gifts of where we came from, right?
Yeah. And
my parents did some things that were awesome, and they did some things that are not awesome. And same with my kids.
Sure.
They get to see me mess up, and that's probably more valuable than seeing me succeed.
Yeah.
And how I handle that.
Right.
But being able to see that in my infant child, it struck me so deeply about, the spiritual of us, right? The nature and the ability we have to connect, and that, we've been calling it energy, right? But, let's call it the soul. right? That assignment that we have with each other, it's not a casual thing.
Yeah.
And they say we're only using 10% of our brains. Well, what are we doing the other 90%?
Yeah.
And I think that's the spiritual, the untapped. And hey, if I'm crazy, at least I'm happy.
Yeah.
You know, if I die and there's nothing there, well, I won't know. But hey, I'd rather live a life full of purpose and meaning to my fellow man than live a life thinking it's all about me.
Yeah.
And what I can get in this moment. Right?
Yeah.
Because service in any therapist office, if you go and serve, you'll be happier. You know, you go be kind, you'll be happier.
Yeah.
There's something to that.
And there are examples of that all over the place.
Right. And, you know, Viktor Frankl, you know, that book, you know, the whole entire point is that we have choice.
Yeah.
And the big lie is this expectation everything's going to be perfect, that we can be perfect, and that, you know, our circumstances should be perfect. All these lies around that, when that's never existed for anyone.
Right. The journey that we're experiencing is where we're supposed to find the value, the happiness.
Yeah, and the things that make us like us, the things that make us proud are when we got pushed down and we got back up. We got pushed down and we got back up. And we love those stories of people doing that. Why is that?
Yeah.
And then we just think that everything should just happen for us naturally without any effort.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
It really doesn't. I get the connection now. Your family is your sister from the Navajo Nation.
I have adopted family.
Yeah.
You know, I have family that I'm genetically related to that don't like me.
Yeah.
Because I did something really weird. You know, first, I mean, like after my daughter died, I had a sister-in-law that wrote me a letter that if I loved my daughter, I would have died inside. Because she's looking at how I'm behaving and I'm taking away her excuses.
Right.
And so I chose to step out of that pattern and that relationship to liberate me to my real purpose. And so I have family that holds me accountable to my best self. And some of them are not genetically related to me, and some of them are.
Yeah.
But there's a standard that I expect for myself, and that just radiates out.
Yeah. So you found the places where you can make a difference. You've got this project with Jedido.
Right.
And
I hope there's like a whole line of Jedido things. I mean, like,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That
and that
has
it impacts
developed
more towns than just Jedido. And then we can give, there's 153 homes that are economically on the edge in Jedido, and they can have cleaning products that'll save them, what, $20-$30? And anyone who's ever been economically on the edge, that's $20 or $30.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That is.
And, you know, and then we just, you know, move it from there. And I've already got someone who's willing to educate, who's native, you know, who's Navajo, who's a teacher as well. So he's going to be our ambassador on the reservation. So it's not one more white face coming down there and being like, and this is how you guys are going to do it. Right. So I have dreams, and it's, you know, I mean, it's like I said, it doesn't matter how far I go with it.
Yeah.
It's that I'm doing it.
Right. And that people are being impacted.
And it's saying to people, I care. And we're going to set it up even where you can like sponsor an elder and get their name.
Yeah.
And create a cultural exchange. The whole reason this happened is because I'm looking at my sister and I'm like, yeah, her house is like mine, but, you know, adobe walls, right? Her life is like mine, but, right? And to realize that in this country, she didn't have the same access to basic sanitation that I do.
It's not really the same.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
But because of that connection, I just didn't go, oh, here's a check.
Yeah.
I rolled up my sleeves and I started, you know, I mean, my garage looked like, you know, a drugstore, you know, and we were getting, you know, maxi pads and underwear and a toothbrush specifically for individuals. And we had their name. And that was such a beautiful experience. And I want to be able to give that
to know who they are,
to those that are helping support Jedido, that you're supporting, you know, Fanny Yazzie and, you know, Sally Begay to have cleaning products in her home.
Yeah. And
when you start exchanging with her letters and information, you know, you're going to do more than give cleaning products. Yeah. You're seeing each other. We're going to break down those barriers of ignorance between us.
Right. What we think we know about Native American population or just problems.
Or just another human being.
Yeah.
And that habit of learning to break those barriers down, you know, that's
with
good,
your
juicy
neighbor,
stuff.
not just someone in another state.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to, I mean, we're recording now in September, but if somebody were to want to help with any of these projects.
Yeah.
Is there a website that they can go to?
Yeah. So Leta Greene, Leta, green, like the color with an E on the end, Jedido at letagreene.com is the email. And my brain's having a little pooper if it's
Well, I can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we can put it in the show notes. And Jedido, nobody knows how to spell it. Yeah. But just find me on social media. We're literally just getting the PayPal all coordinated and we've been selling bottles, using, you can donate, right? And we're getting a 501(c)(3) all set up, and
nice.
We've kept all the money separate, but I'm not waiting until I had all the pieces in place because I want to I've got a guy who has a helicopter who's willing to fly it down to,
wow.
And I'm like, oh, this is so crazy, right?
That is so cool.
So, we want to make sure that they're not running out of what we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That shows me that whatever it is that you're intent on doing, there is always a way. Now, I don't know anybody with a helicopter, but now I know somebody who knows somebody that has
I know, right? And the funny thing is I didn't know I knew somebody with a helicopter because I wasn't going around being like, hey, but, to kids, the biggest message I can give is, your brain right now thinks what you're experiencing is permanent. Yeah. And one thing about life is nothing's permanent. No. And, when, they're talking about the new normal, it feels really, I want to go up to kids and be like, the world's lost its mind, right? Right. But, you can become and do, I surprise myself. Like the part, there's like the little girl in me who's like watching this podcast and, all the different things. And I told my mom one day, I said, if I met me, I'd be really impressed because I'm just me. And I'm shocked at what I've been able to do and move forward because my intention isn't about glory. Yeah. I know that because my intention's based on just trying to do and be the right person for me and for what God, and I'm not asking for validation, that he's been able to guide me and I've been able to hear it. Yeah. And it just starts with little teeny steps, and I'm only 46. So it gets kind of exciting. Right? Yeah. What I can support, what I can affect. And I want kids to know that I was the kid that hated themselves. Yeah. I hated me. And that was because I was listening to the source of all poop. Yeah. And I was like, in the poop, right? And if we just change the environment in our brain, the whole entire world's open up to us. And the whole entire focus of, having $1 million. There's people with millions of dollars who commit suicide. Yeah. It's not the money that makes us happy. It's the purpose and the intention that makes us happy. Accomplish. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay if it's selfish. If you're trying to figure out who you are and what you want, what you're supposed to be doing, or what you want to be doing with your life. Oh, it's 100%
you're supposed to be selfish as a child. Right. You're supposed to figure out you.
You are supposed to be. Yeah.
That's not bad. And that I like me doesn't, some people would call that selfish or ego. Right. I call that productive.
Yeah. And with that mentality, you are more capable of having an impact not only on yourself and your future, but other people. Yeah. Because we all know, and we talked about this with water, if we are kind to people, both we feel good and they feel good.
Absolutely. It's, creates a vibration. Yeah. But I think it's our responsibility as humans to start with being kind with ourselves so we can give what we possess.
Do you think you can hear, and people can interpret this however they want, whether it's God or the universe pushing them in a direction. Do you think you can hear God or the universe when you're feeling poopy?
Absolutely.
So even
I think God, I don't know how much time you want me to take. I'm like,
well, I just wanted to point out to people who feel
absolutely.
like their parents are down on them, or their friends are down on them, or their teachers don't understand what they're going through.
The moment that I was probably in one of my deepest fear situations is the moment I go back to know that God is real, because I felt a protection. Yeah. And it wasn't a beautiful moment. It was a scary moment. It was a fearful moment. Yeah. And, I remember, sometimes I'd sit in church and people are like, oh, that moment when you knew God was real. And I'd look around and I see their facial expressions fluent in sign language, and knowing that my experience did not match up with theirs. Yeah. But that my moment of knowing that God was real came from a dark place is actually a gift, because it's helped me connect with people differently. Yeah. And it's given me a foundation that I don't have to wonder if it was La La Land.
Yeah.
Right?
Because who would ever have a positive experience in a negative situation?
Right. And it was just this moment of, wow. But I didn't, God and I took time. It was a relationship that had to develop.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, I always tell kids, if you're angry, give it to God.
Yeah.
If you're any negative emotion you have, he can take it.
Yeah.
And I do believe that God has a wife, and if that helps you feel more comfortable, just you work it out. They can handle this.
Yeah.
And like any parents love their children, not all of them have the skills to do it well.
Right.
And that's okay. We get to give them, forgiveness and grace and boundaries and all of that. But I am so thankful for the functional and the dysfunctional people in my life, because as my grandmother said, nobody's perfectly useless. They can always serve as an example.
Yeah.
Which is ironic that was my grandmother that said that,
Yeah.
And, she's passed now. And on the day she died, I just thought I should have lots of feelings. And then I was like, oh, this is the first time that grandma's really liked me.
Wow.
Because she can see me
Yeah.
for who I really am. And
Yeah.
and I think it is important to understand that we do have infant value.
Yeah.
That is a basis. There is no label that matters. We get so distracted in
Right.
what we define ourselves as, when really the only one that matters, like I go in and I teach corporate on how to deal with sexual abuse and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm taking them to this point of, if notice you're objectifying someone else, they're not the problem, you are.
Yeah.
Because the only label that matters is that's another human being, and can I say that's another daughter or son of God?
Yeah.
But if you just have to go to that's another human being, any other label than that they deserve the same respect and credence and value that you expect in your life, if you can't give that to them, they're not the problem, you are.
Yeah.
The bum in the street to the CEO.
Yeah.
Right? As a trucker's kid, I've hung out with all of them.
Yeah.
And we all have the same drive and need to be significant
Yeah.
and loved.
Yeah.
And you take that away from people and they get angry. But we can also be the people that are the voice to give it back to people.
Right. That is powerful. And I hope that everybody that is listening can feel that power, that regardless of the stage that you are in life, however old or young you feel, everybody does have value, and everybody should feel okay with being selfish on that level, that I am worth something and that I deserve whatever break it is that you feel like you deserve.
Absolutely.
And not be down on yourself.
It's not selfish to take care of you.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Self-care is not bubble baths. It's self-talk.
Yeah.
I do like a bubble bath, but if you're in there
Maybe
being
both
like,
at the same time, you're talking positive.
even better, and you're in water.
Yeah. The positive energy of water. Well, Leta, it has been awesome talking to you today. I appreciate you taking the time, even if you were a little bit late.
But I communicated.
It's totally fine. That the message that you're sharing with people, both on the stage, in your books, about people's value, people's worth, and that people who are struggling or having a hard time, that you're willing to do something about it before even the legalities are taken care of. Yeah. That's powerful. And I hope people can feel that and maybe recognize some way that they can apply that to themselves. Thank you for joining me today on Own Your Good. I'd like to give a special thanks to Arches Audio. They are the ones that provided this awesome music. If you need anything for a project, I would go and check them out. They have a great selection of music and other services to help you with your creative projects. I hope that you found this valuable. If you enjoyed this episode and it did something for you, or you think somebody might benefit from it, please share this. It would mean a lot to me to help spread this positivity and this idea that people can change, improve, and ultimately own their good.